Alright, I'm going to introduce some basic concepts of lighting here using the jack-o'-lantern as an example. So I'm going to come over here to create, and I'm going to make a cylinder, and using keyboard entry I'm going to make it 500 with a height of -25 and hit create. I'm then going to go ahead and in modify, I'm going to increase the number of sides to 64. I open up the material editor. I'm just going to make a new material and assign that just a basic gray. Okay. So now some of the stuff I'm going to show you is going to be a little bit different in different versions of Max. The basic principles are going to be the same. I'm going to come here to create. I'm going to go to lights, which is the third option. And from photometric, I actually want to get out of there and go to standard. And under standard, I'm going to click Omni, and I'm just going to click in my scene, and that actually makes a little light. So I'm going to go into move. I'm going to move them around. I may even want to hit Alt W to show all four, so I can easily just place this guy inside my pumpkin as if there was a candle inside of him. Alright, so if I move around here in 3D, anytime I pause long enough, the lighting's going to kick in. So once you make an Omni light, the first thing you want to do is go to Modify and turn on Shadows. Because as soon as you turn on Shadows, you can see now we get the shape of our pumpkin on our little backdrop. So I'm going to select that cylinder and the pumpkin and hit Z to zoom out and see them both. Maybe I'll just zoom in a little bit more here. So now if I come over here to the front view and I move that light, I could adjust how that kind of sits inside them. And it really just depends on where you want to actually have the. Do you want to have that outside? Do you not want to have that outside? So when you are working in here inside the viewports, this is hardware rendering, meaning this video card is actually rendering this out. If I come up here to render and just click the render button, it's going to render out an image based off of whatever viewport's active. So if I right click in perspective and click render, that'll render out the viewport. Now that's cool, that's our pumpkin, and he's definitely casting a light out there. We can even come in here to color, and I can actually click on that to give a little bit of a nice little bit of orange. I'm playing with it. There we go. I'm going to zoom out on the top, and now here I'm going to go to create, and I'm on lights, I'm still on standard, and I'm going to make a target spot. So I'm going to click target spot, and over here I need to zoom out about this far. I'm going to click over here towards the bottom of the screen and drag over to my pumpkin. So where I initially clicked, that's where the light was placed, and where I drag, that's where its target is. I'm going to right click here in front until target spot turns off, zoom out, and then I'm going to select that light and I'm going to raise it up, because right now it looks like our pumpkin's about to be hit by a car. So I actually want him to look like he's getting a little bit of moonlight. So we'll kind of raise him up here. And just like with our Omni, we want to make sure we turn on shadow casting. Alright, so now he's casting a shadow. And I'm going to come in here. Anytime you change the color of a light, the next light you create is going to pick that up. And I want this to be like a nice moonlight. So we're gonna really push it, make him nice and blue. Okay. There we go. So that's going to be our pretty moonlight. So we'll click and render that out. Alright, so kind of what you're seeing is an artifact of what's called shadow maps here. So if I click on this light, there's an option called shadow map parameters. Wrong one. Shadow map parameters, there we go. So I can increase the size of the shadow map parameters to something like 2048, so that when I re-render, oops, remember it's going to render whatever viewport's active. Here front is active. If I right click in perspective and click render, there you go. By increasing that shadow map parameter size, you don't get that little artifacting underneath, which looks nicer. Alright, so we kind of have this light coming from the inside of the pumpkin. We have the light up in the sky. In order to really, accent the fact that we have a 3D object, let's make another spotlight. We're going to go over here. We want to make sure that we're zoomed out here in the top, because we're going to go target spot. We're going to kind of in the opposite up here in the top left, we're going to click and drag. And when we release, there we go, there's the light. I'm going to right click until target spot turns off, and then I'm going to raise this guy up in the air. And I'm actually going to move him over a little bit. So he's kind of coming in a little bit from the top. And we're going to backlight our pumpkin. So I'm going to take this light and I'm going to make it more of an orange. Almost like maybe there's a light from a house behind him. There we go. And maybe what we'll do with this one is we'll take that spotlight parameter. And I'm going to take the hotspot and drag that all the way down to 0. So he's nice and kind of, that means it's going to be super intense right where that circle is and fade out to this ring. And then I'm going to bring this fall off ring in. And just kind of drag this down. Now he's got a little bit of a spotlight hitting him from behind. And so now if I right click to make perspective active and do render, it gives me a nice little render of my pumpkin. And so I can select him, and if I turn on Control R, I can orbit around, Alt Z to zoom in. If you really want to adjust your framing, you gotta come over to the name of the viewport and click Show Safe Frames, and that's going to show your renderable space. And then Alt Z to zoom in, and then hold that middle mouse button to move around. And then if you render, you can get yourself a nice render for your pumpkin. Kind of the last step would be here in the material editor. If you double click on the pumpkin's material, what you could do is increase your specular value, and it's going to make the pumpkin more shiny. And really, pumpkins are a little bit of a harder surface, kind of like this. There we go. And so now, when I render, see how it looks a little bit glossier, a little bit shinier. That's currently affecting the whole pumpkin, but he looks a little bit better like that. So that's basically the way that you make a jack-o'-lantern, and you can punch a hole of it, and then that's actually how we go through and we light them. So have fun.